neonGliiitch had an excellent comment on one of my streams about stocking hexes. They say, I've seen this concept of having stuff every hex, but man, that feels like so much, in my opinion. I've hiked through the woods before, and let me tell you, sometimes you just see nothing. Sure, you might see birds or squirrels, but do we need to describe that every hex? I just feel like explaining a hex to the start of a zone, and then just moving on and not filling every hex with countless detail will make it so much faster. And for a game like West Marches, where your players need to get from point A to B and back again in a single session, this will let players do more than listening to how every hex has birds in the trees or something. I don't know, just seems like a lot to me. First of all, thanks for the comment, neonGliiitch. Second of all, I don't disagree with you at all, but I don't think that it has to be a big investment of time that you're putting into describing what's going on in a hex. I'm going to talk about 6 mile hexes because I think that's more or less the more common hex size. In a 6 mile hex, there is over 31, I think, more or less square miles of stuff. I think it's between 31 and 32. I'm sure someone can correct me if they feel like looking it up. That's a lot of mileage, actually. Even though you're moving from one face to the other face, it's only 6 miles. And that would be if you're traveling in a completely straight line. So the idea that there's something in 31-ish square miles of terrain is not a lot. Now, I agree, in our world, there are probably areas of forest, maybe the Pacific Northwest or deep into some big forest where you can travel for miles and miles and it's just forest. One thing to keep in mind, though, is we're playing a game, and part of the game is, I think, establishing sort of a heightened sense of reality. So even if in ye old woods, there might literally be nothing but trees, I think to say, hey, there's one kind of special or significant or interesting bit in this hex, it isn't a bad thing. Now, I think you can get carried away, and I've definitely gone back and forth depending on which stream you watched or listened to, and you might have seen, I might have been saying, well, maybe we should have more than one or even 3 or something like this. But to me, when I'm doing that, a lot of what I'm doing in my kind of prep is sort of layering prep. I don't need to have 8 things in a hex when I first prep a hex crawl. I might just have 1 thing, or I might have none thing, and then through play, as I'm iterating on my hex map, I can kind of layer things on top of that. But I certainly agree, just start with 1, right? Start with 1 thing. And by the way, that 1 thing doesn't have to be a lot of work. It doesn't have to be super meaningful. It can just be, oh, look, there's a particular grove of trees. Look, there's a little meadow with wildflowers. It can be kind of anything of that sort. It doesn't have to take more than a minute to explain. It doesn't have to take, heck, it can take less than a minute. Look, there's something here that piques your interest, or your eyes wander and spot something. Now it's up to the party whether they want to deal with that or not. And frankly, oftentimes parties have other things to do. As neonGliiitch mentioned, they're on a West Marches type deal. They're trying to get back to town. They're trying to hoof it. They're not interested in exploring glades of wildflowers or particularly tall maple trees or whatever the thing is. They just want to move on. If I'm thinking about, well, I've got some druids over here and the party's starting to interact with them a bit, and then I'm thinking, well, the druids, maybe they're enacting some sort of rite or ritual or ceremony. Maybe I'll look on my hex map and maybe I'll say, hey, wait a minute, there was this beautiful grove of flowers. And of course, being that I'm running kind of a fantasy campaign, maybe there's not just wildflowers like my seer, but they're bigger, brighter. And I described them originally and the player said, yeah, whatever, we bypassed them. But now maybe these druids are going there to perform some rite on the night of the new moon in the spring in this grove of extremely bright wildflowers. So 1, now I have this location that I can reuse for myself. I don't have to come up with a new place these druids are going. I can use one that's already on my hex map. Number 2, if the party had explored that location or bypassed it, they may already know what it is. When someone says, oh yeah, I heard the druids are going somewhere, I don't know where exactly, but they mentioned something like the rainbow grove of flowers or something like that. Maybe one of the players who took notes says, hey, wait a minute, we saw that grove as we were coming back from the ancient crypt of Sir Gregory. That might match that location. So I think I know where that is. Now suddenly this seeing that on their walking from A to B now has extra meaning. Of course, a lot of this, my example anyway, kind of depends on your party really engaging in this particular stretch of land or whatever this area more than once. They're not just going back and forth and then leaving to go to some other parts unknown, but they're kind of staying in this region. And therefore, you can kind of build up all this information about the region, all these locations, all these places, and they'll have import. The party will be able to use their local knowledge of them. You can use places that you have generated in different plots and schemes and events, and you end up weaving a really cool tapestry of things in your hex crawl, but it's going to be vary. Your miles may vary. And I would say it's very easy to go overboard and want to do all kinds of different things. Stick with a thing. It doesn't even have to be a big thing. It could be something that just at first is just scenery. Oh, look, there's a rock that looks like someone's face. Oh, that's interesting. Let's move on. Later on, when someone's saying, oh, to get to the old mine entrance, you got to find the rock that looks like someone's face and turn left and go 100 paces. Bam, you've got something. It may be something that the party doesn't even get to because they don't see it. That's another factor. If you want to have something that's not known, in other words, that the party's not going to just see it on their initial walkthrough, you can totally have stuff hidden and say, hey, you're going to have to explore here if you want to see something. You're going to have to get off the beaten path if you want to notice these different landmarks or different places or whatever's going on. You can use all kinds of different systems, and folks have talked about, I've talked about, and other resources have talked about different ways to grade sort of the, what do you call it, the magnitude of a location in Hex. Is it major? It's something everybody sees from a distance? Is it something maybe much more minor that maybe you could spot, but you have to look for it? Or is it something that's hidden that you're really going to have to dig in there? And you can have one of each. You can have one of any. And of course, you can have empty hexes. And sometimes, I think, in some places, I think empty hexes are absolutely appropriate to show that the expanse of things, in which case you're trying to show that, look, there is very little here. You're in a vast expanse of a desert. Maybe in a single 6 mile hex, you say, yeah, there is nothing but dunes or rock or both. And you're not going to find something that is particularly noteworthy. And that's part of the problem. That's what makes navigating in this area difficult. There are very few landmarks, very few things. And if there is an oasis or a shelter or something like that, you're really going to have to find it. You're not just going to spot it. It's not going to be something you just walk into that area of desert and say, oh, look, there's the oasis. No, you're going to have to dig around and find it. And that's totally appropriate. Really, all this stuff, they're tools. Use them to the extent that it makes sense for you in the context of your game and what you're trying to show about the wilderness. And if ever a tool, whether it's mine or advice, whether it's my tool or advice or somebody else's, whenever it stops matching the context of what you're trying to do, then don't use it. Nothing should be absolute. It's all about, what does it do for your game? How does it help you? The minute it stops helping you is probably the minute you should stop using it, or at least put it on hold until it starts being meaningful for you again. But thanks so much for the comment, neonGliiitch. I do want to kind of refresh some of my Hexcrawl videos that I recorded a while ago. And of course, my thoughts are always evolving. And when you record something, it gets stuck in time. So I think maybe over the next little while, I'm going to revisit some of my older topics, give it a little bit of a review, a rewrite, a re-record with some of my changing thoughts and kind of where I am now on that topic. Hopefully this was helpful to anyone who's been wondering about hex stocking. I will have more on that. Please keep questions, comments, and everything going. It really helps energize me and get me going. Enjoy the rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on. Talk to you later. Bye now.